So the cockerel had crowed right next to this road. If we hadn't the cockerel hadn't crowed, we'd have never have found Star Lane. So we thought, oh, no, hold on, this is weird. So, well, that can't be anything to do with a clue. How could a cockerel be made to crow? But anyway, we thought, oh, well, Star Lane, maybe that's what that star represents. So we followed the lane to the end, and right in front of the end of the lane, on the hill right opposite, was the church. When we looked at the sign for the church, it was called St. Michael and All Angels. All the angels. When we had read the books trying to find anything to do with an All Angels church, or an Angels church, there wasn't one, because it's in the book, in the local guidebooks, it's simply St. Michael's Church. But its full name is St. Michael and All Angels, and you wouldn't know that unless you'd gone there. And we'd never have found it if it wasn't for the fact that this crow had cocked, right beside this Star Lane thing. Anyway, we found out from the local vicar that it did indeed have 12 gates around it. Not big, great big gates, but there were 12 in its local tradition, that the 12 gates of the church. There's even some local poems about it. 3 on the one side, 3 on the other, 3 on the other, and 3 on the other, just like the verse in the Bible says. So we decided to look around these. Have you got the one with the gates somewhere? That's it, yeah. This was the oldest gate, and this was the original way into the church that would have been there in 1906 when Cove Jones had left these clues. And there's part of the wall that goes round it, and this mentions a wall. Now, we were looking at the other gates, and Graham Russell decided to look at this one because it was the oldest. The public footpath goes away across a green, village green here. And just down in there where that wall is, he found, inscribed on a stone, the letter M, which was the letter associated with this second wise man, Melchior. Balthazar had been the first one, Melchior the second. So if you've got a picture of Graham, if you make him a bit smaller, you can just about make out there, it's not very good in this, but there's the letter M inscribed on this stone. Just below where his hand is, unfortunately, there was a stone that was slightly darker than the others, which was a bit loose. He took it out, and behind it, he discovered, sort of secreted up in the mud, another stone. Again, it was a very clever place to hide something because it was a public place anyone could get to. No one's going to start taking stones out the wall down there unless you particularly know what you're looking for. It's about this big. It was taken eventually to the jewellers and they analysed it as a jasper stone. So again, we had found another of the stones that Jacob Cove Jones seems to have believed, or at least certainly he had believed, it had once belonged to the Knights Templars and had once been set in the Breastplate of Aaron. So we had one to go. And this particular one, the clue, the thing that this wise man was holding, was basically this thing that's supposed to have held, presumably, frankincense. It seems to be a frankincense burner, or it might be the myrrh holder. I can't, that Latin phrase there, forget that, that means something, but that gets too complicated going into that. What it appears to show on that is some sort of bridge, or gateway, or gatehouse. Now, the verse that pertains to that particular wise man's clue reads, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and came into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison." Now, there's that strange word. That was the one of the name of the rivers of the Garden of Eden. It was also the name of a Roman aqueduct that fed fed Jerusalem with water. Specifically, there's also mention of a land called Havilah, which was the local name for one of the pylons, a huge pylon that held up this aqueduct in ancient Jerusalem. So where are we looking for an aqueduct locally? A bridge of some sort? Cutting a long story short, very close down the road, there was an aqueduct that fed the Stratford Union Canal, which had been built in about 1830, so it was there in Cove Jones's day. It took it over another river that went underneath. This talks about 4 rivers meeting, where it's like if the one goes across and another goes underneath it. This aqueduct was just down the road. We thought, that's got to be, it's the only aqueduct in the area. And cutting a long story short, I mean, it was really weird because Jody had found 1 stone, Graham had found 1 stone, And we didn't actually think, well, it's about my time to find one. But it was me who happened to find, there's me standing by it, look. Right there, I haven't got a picture close-up of it, but one of these bricks had the letter G inscribed on it, which Gaspar is the name of the third of the wise men. This one we had to prise out. We had to get this out with a penknife because it was all, it was actually cemented in. But behind it, again, there was another small stone. Again, about the same size as the others. It's like half egg-shaped, as which would be fit into a ring or some sort of mount. And this stone was supposed to be onyx. And when we took it to the jewellers, they said, yes, this is an onyx stone. Now, unfortunately, we hadn't found the others, which are diamonds and sapphires and rubies and things. We'd got the cheapest ones, obviously. I mean, that's what happens, isn't it? But we had got the ones that fitted what the Bible says are in the bottom three, the bottom three from the breastplate of Aaron, the ones that Cove Jones claimed to have found. That should be, is that the end of them? Have we got to the end? Ah, we've got those. Now, yeah, those, yeah. Go back to Star Lane for a second. No, go back to the dove. The interesting thing was that Graham and Jody, one time, and myself and Jody said to Graham, we were talking after we found this. This is amazing. And Jody said, how the hell did we find these so quickly? And it took us a few weeks. There'd been people looking for these for ages. The family, Cove Jones's family, had apparently been searching for these stones for years that he'd hidden. How come nobody else has found these things? And we thought, well, I suppose back in like 1920 or when they were searching or whenever, they didn't have roads as good as they are now. We didn't have, they would have been going around on horses or some old banger of a car. They wouldn't have had good maps, access to libraries where you've got guidebooks and so on. But even so, we thought, well, we did get these very fast. And then Graham said, we've been helped. We've been helped to find this. So what are you talking about? He said, think about when we were at the Saxon Mill and that dove flew over. If that dove had not flown over when it did, we'd have never gone over to the other side of that river. We were looking for a dovecot. There wasn't a dovecot there. What the hell was a dove doing flying at night and almost hitting me on the head? This particular verse describes a dove. His eyes are like the eyes of doves by the rivers of water. My eyes followed the dove. In the stained glass window, there's a dove shown there, looking down at that particular wise man. In fact, the actual aqueduct, the weir itself, looks very much like that thing he's sitting on, and all that straw supposed to be coming out underneath. The water rushes through like that. No, but there is no way that Cove Jones, that is not one of his clues. That he couldn't have put a dove there. Well, stay there until these guys turn up, and then you just fly off. Okay. That obviously didn't happen. So Graham said that, some way, I mean, that fated chance, synchronicity, serendipity, whatever you want to call it, we wouldn't have found it without that. But that's not the only animal, not the only bird to have helped us. There's the cockerel. If that cockerel had not crowed right beside Star Lane, we would never have followed Star Lane in order to have found this church. So he said, no, it does seem as if we were guided to find these things, which seemed very strange indeed. So I thought, okay, fine. And so we decided, well, what can we do with these stones? What do they actually do? I was speaking to a gentleman last night. I said, well, do these stones do anything? I said, well, I'll tell you tomorrow. They have done some rather interesting things. Remember that these stones, and okay, we only had, if they are even if they are not the stones from the Old Testament or the ones the Templars had, maybe just Cove Jones got them from somewhere. They are still the three types of stones that are mentioned in the Bible for being at the bottom of the breastplate of Aaron, that seemingly, if my friend from Fermilab is right, can control these strange Earth-like phenomena that seem to take place around the Burton Dasset Hills and supposedly at the Mountain of God. So we thought, well, let's take them to the place where the lights are most recently seen. And remember I told you there was that guy by that lake, which is that one I showed you, where that strange light was. In fact, I didn't show that back again in that picture. Which was, actually, that's not the lake where the guy saw it coming from the burning bush. That's the one where the guy felt that he felt a tingling over him and he didn't have arthritis anymore. A number of lights had been seen by this lake, in particular this red light, and we'd been shown this photograph. Now, we don't know for a fact if that is somebody, or if it's a real light or somebody with a torch, but that is pretty much the sort of thing that people claim to have seen. So we decided to go there. We went in the middle of the night. God knows why we always go to these places in the middle of the night, but we did. And we turned up there, and we started walking along a path with the 3 stones. This path goes right round. This is the island in the middle of the lake there. The path goes all the way around it. We started walking along the path, and we were up there, so it's pitch black. Suddenly, Jody stops. Across the other side of the lake, we see exactly that. Something just looks like that, shining the other side of the lake. And we'd already seen this photograph. Nobody knew we were going there. Nobody had set us up or anything. And at first, somebody with a cigarette. No, that's a ball of light. And it seemed to be just hovering over the water. And after a few minutes, it suddenly went out. And another one came on, higher up in the trees. And that went out. And then another one came on. And then it started sort of seemingly kind of moving closer towards us. And there was all the time, there was this kind of noise going on. You know, if anybody's seen the film The Blair Witch Project, that hideous noise of those stones cracking together in the woodland. It sounded like that. And then there was a kind of noise going on too. It literally did sound like whispering. And I was standing there, Graham and Jodie were just standing like that. Jodie, for some reason, felt the urge to hold her arms out. And she suddenly said that she felt, because we were moving back, and Graham said, Jodie, come on, let's go, let's go. And she said she felt this tingling sensation all over her. Now, she wasn't suffering from any ailment at the time, so we don't know whether if she would have got better. But basically, this happened and carried on for around about, I don't know, a minute maybe. And then suddenly, light went out. It was pitch black, there was no sound, no birds making a noise, we didn't hear anyone, and we stayed there for about another hour after that and heard nothing else. But the chances of going to a place and seeing one of these earth lights are pretty rare. There have been local people who have lived in that area, walked around that lake 100 times, and have never seen anything. And we went there with these stones, and that happened. Which leads me to the final thing we tried to do with these stones. They were taken back to America, and unfortunately I don't have them with me now because they are in the States with Graham and Jodie. Which leads me to how I started this talk with how we changed the Mormon religion and founded the state of Maryland and made Russell Crowe fall off his seat. We said, well, we found these stones. What the hell do we do with them? You know, let's just say for wild guessing that we were meant to find them and we'd been helped to find these stones by weird serendipities, coincidences. What are we supposed to do with these things? Well, Graham and Jodie were invited along, a few months later than this, to the Sundance Film Festival, which is like a Cannes Film Festival that goes on in Utah, which is run by, what's the Sundance guy's name? Robert Redford. Him. And they were there, and Russell Crowe was there. And because his wife or girlfriend, I'm not quite sure which one she is a fan of Air Supply, Graham Russell was asked to go and do a play at one of their parties, and was a personal guest of Russell Crowe. They were sitting around a table, Russell Crowe, his girlfriend, Graham and Jodie. I'll say his girlfriend, it might be his wife. And Graham and Jodie sitting around this table. And Russell Crowe's girlfriend claims to be like psychic. And suddenly, you know, she was like doing palm readings or whatever else. And suddenly, halfway through, because Jodie, by the way, kept these stones with her. She wouldn't have them out of her possession. They did say, Graham, well, you found one, you ought to keep it. But I said, take them back with you to America because, I mean, that's where they lived in Utah. And I said, you know, take them back there and keep them all together. And she always kept them in her bag. And they hadn't told, nobody knew about this at this time. And while they were sitting around the table, Russell Crowe's girlfriend suddenly said, she was like doing a reading on Jodie and said, I see some stones. Well, yeah, magic stones, people have crystals and stuff. 3 stones. What? Russell Crowe was, yeah, I see 3 stones. And she said, remember these stones were called the stones of fire? She said the words fire stones. Now, at that moment, Graham and Jodie were quite clearly sort of like, you know, rather impressed. And she said, there should be 12. And she seemed to know everything. She said, there should be 12 of these stones. The top 3 are the stones of infinity. The next are the future stones. The next are the present stones. And the bottom 3, and this is exactly what she said, knowing nothing about this, are the present stones.